physical realm. I believe in science, but I also believe there is a spiritual realm.
There we go.
And it helps us understand some things that otherwise don't make a lot of sense. And I thought of this because there was a story, and I used it on the Ramsey Paul show. I can't find it now, but it's just as well. It's just as well because it's not the specific individual. There's many like him. It was a big guy. You know, I don't know. He's probably about 6'4", over 200 pounds, a big guy. And he had makeup on, red lipstick, a wig on, and he was wearing a skirt, but he was dressed up as a Boy Scout, and he was being interviewed by this black lady, and he was talking about homosexuals and transgenderism and all that sort of stuff, and he was speaking with a lisp, and he was coming across like this is just a wonderful thing. I think he was talking about the Stonewall riots or something like that. I don't know if you guys remember that. But when I see someone like that, it's really a sense of revulsion in me, not in the sense of, it's a different than a natural revulsion. When I look, let's say, like at a deer, you see a dead deer that's been there a while and you see maggots in it, that's revolting. That's revolting, but that's not a natural sense. When I see some man dressed in such a manner, really inverting nature, this anti-nature, in a sense mocking nature, and as a Christian, I believe nature came from God. So it's like mocking God. I feel a sense of disgust in my soul that's not natural. It's like on a spiritual level, like I'm looking at something that is really not natural here. And I don't know how many of you have experienced this, and maybe I'm it, but I've really detected that something has gone really strange in the world, at least in America, in a spiritual sense. And I don't mean wars or famines or anything like that. We've always had that sort of thing. I'm talking on a deeper level that something seems to have changed, and not in a good way, not in a good way, in a very scary way. So I've been kind of revisiting a lot of texts and books, and I happened to see the old book, The Exorcist. And if you don't know, The Exorcist was written by William Peter Blatty. And just so you know, he was a Jesuit. And he wasn't a Catholic, he was a Jesuit. It's kind of a Catholic joke. No, they're a sect of the Catholics. And he researched a real possession, and he was going to write a book that was nonfiction about exorcisms. Instead, he wrote a fictional book that came to be known as The Exorcist. I'm just reading it again now. And it became a movie, and the director was William Friedkin, and he was Jewish. So it's kind of interesting. You had a guy that wrote the book that was a Christian that believed in this stuff, and then William Friedkin didn't believe in this, and in fact he was opposed to Christianity. He was Jewish. And it's sort of interesting how this all came about. So I was looking at this about demonic possession and that whole vibe, and there was a scene in the movie that now, in the 2023, I just totally recognize this. But when I saw the movie years ago, I was too young to see it when it came out. I'm sure my parents wouldn't let me anyway. It's a really hardcore movie. But I think in the early 80s I saw that for the first time, the movie. And there was this scene right here where in the church, the Virgin Mary was desecrated, and there was exaggerated breast put on it, and then a large penis and blood.
Then he connects.
And at the time, when I saw this, I'm like, well, this doesn't make sense. Why would you have a creature with breast and a penis? This is mixing things up. But now in 2023, we all recognize, transgenderism. This is a big thing now where these men, they take hormones to get breasts, but they still have a penis, and they call themselves women. And it's a abomination. It really is an abomination. And I recognize it. I'm like, well, this is what they were showing in the movie. And this goes back to ancient times where demons would do this sort of form of taking characteristics of a man and a woman. Because in a sense, it was an attack on God, mocking God, a subversion. That's why homosexuality, there's always been that tie, because a man and a woman have sex, penis in a vagina creates life. A man puts his penis in another man's anus, it just creates disease. And this is why that's celebrated by the satanic element. And it hit me that we're living through this, that our society really celebrates this sort of thing.
He's dead, isn't he?
And just as a background, from what I believe, what I was taught, is there's really two types of evil, two categories of evil.
No,
there's human nature evil, what the Apostle Paul called the flesh. And evil of the flesh is like our animal nature. So let's say if you're mad at someone and you hit him and kill him, that's evil, but that's like within you. That's part of being a human. Or you see another man's wife, and she's real sexy, and you want to have sex with her because of your sexual drive, even though you know that's wrong. You're breaking up a family. That's evil. I'm not trying to minimize it, but that's of the flesh. That's human nature. And stealing. If you want something, you take it because you have it. Again, that's of the flesh. Or even a murder, where say you're robbing a store and you don't want to leave any witnesses, so you kill the cashier. Oh, totally evil. Need the death penalty. But it's of the flesh. But then there's another category of evil. It's not worse than human nature, but it's a spiritual, satanic evil. And this is something you don't see naturally. You don't see this in animals, like torture. Animals don't torture each other. They're very cruel to each other. They kill each other, rip each other apart, and eat each other. But they don't torture for fun. Humans torture. And they don't engage in aberrant sex for the purposes of aberrant sex. I mean, some animals, they don't know any better, but in a sense, with the humans, it's raised as it's a type of spiritual sickness, or sexually molesting little children. And I'm not talking 16, 17-year-olds that are physically adults. I mean, little kids, there's no physical reason to do that. Sleeping with your neighbor's wife if she's an adult, that's evil, but there's a biological reason that explains it. But going after little kids and torturing them and raping them, that's just a form of sickness. And we've seen this. There's a couple of homosexuals that adopted boys. I think it was in Australia. There's been a few of these cases, and then they raped them and they put it on film. And in some cases, there's a guy that went to Thailand and he killed some boys that way. Just horrific. And there's no natural reason for this. You're getting into what I believe to be a satanic reason. Because as humans, we're both flesh and we're both spirit. And what can happen is there's sometimes people can become possessed, like in The Exorcist. But what's really different than from the book in the movie. In fact, there were some battles between the author, again, who's a Jesuit background, and Friedkin, who is the director, about, like her head spinned around. The author of the book didn't want that in the movie. He said, well, that's stupid. That's not what would happen. But they wanted that for a dramatic effect. But usually what happens in a possession, I don't think people levitate or start screaming in Latin or all that scary stuff. Satan is a lot more subtle. What he does is he presents himself as an angel of light, meaning what we're doing here is good. This isn't evil. This is a good thing. And this is how we've been able, I believe, Satan, to convince people that, hey, if you chop your penis off your little boy and put him on hormones, that's gender-affirming surgery. This is a good thing. And, that guy that's dressed up as a scout leader. And the Scouts, you remember, they were such a wholesome organization where men, fathers, and their sons would get together, bond, and they would teach their boys important topics like how to hunt, shoot, camp, that sort of thing, how to use a compass. And then homosexuals forced their way into the Scout movement, and it destroyed the Scout movement because they ended up molesting the children. And that's why they always like to mock the Scouting movement. And so why would someone do that? Why would someone dress like a woman, but then have a beard and be an exaggerated lisp and then wearing a scout uniform? Because he's mocking. It's not natural. It's not. It's a rebellion against God. It's, I believe, 100% satanic. Just like we saw in the book where Reagan, that was the girl's name that got possessed. I do believe some people get possessed, and how they do things are not by having their head spinning around or floating in the air, but they push like gender surgery where they cut off and molest people. It's a very evil concept. And that's just one example. We're seeing more and more of this through our country.
If I go here.
And it's interesting because it seems to be in the rules between God and Satan. While we're here on earth, usually Satan can't and his demons can't really get in us unless God releases his protection. And even people that don't believe in God, they have a certain protection that, maybe the demons can tempt or Satan can tempt, but they can't just get in you and take over you or take over your mind. But there comes a point, and the Bible talks about this, that eventually, if you keep going to sin and keep doing evil, God will just give up on people, and his basic attitude, hey, if you want to live a satanic lifestyle, I'm done with you. Go for it. See where that leaves you. And they just lose themselves. And that can happen on an individual basis, but I think that can also happen collectively with a nation. And I think in the United States, whether people like to admit it or not, it was a Christian nation. Not everyone was a Christian, but that was the basic religion of this country. And I think this country, this nation did have God's blessing that did protected us. But this nation, and God talks about this quite a bit in the Old Testament with Israel. Eventually, if you keep sinning against God as collectively, and boy, we have as a nation, murdering little babies with abortion, and I think legalizing homosexual marriage, I think spiritually that clicked something off, and God just started to withdraw from our nation. And then the floodgates of evil were open, and now we're seeing perversions that I never even thought were, I couldn't imagine. I couldn't imagine, but we're seeing now being pushed in our entire society, and it's escalating. And I think that has a spiritual component, that God has removed his blessing, and Satan has been allowed to come in, and it's really a scary time in many ways. So I found it interesting going back to this book and looking at it, that the real danger of possession or satanic influence isn't like a little girl flying around in her bed and vomiting pea soup or anything like that. It's someone that's trying to tell you that there's a million genders and you got to cut off your penis and all this sort of, we see this perversion where they're teaching little kids about sodomy in school with each other, and really, really gross stuff that looks literally like demons, where you see these guys that have breasts because of hormones, and then a penis, and they're anal, they're sodomizing some other boy or something, and this is being pushed on our country as a good thing. And if you object to it, you're the evil one. And this is what Satan does. He inverts everything. So he calls what's good and wholesome. So if you believe in God, you believe in a family, you believe in people acting good, that is evil. That's evil. We got to celebrate the perverted, the deranged, and this is what we're seeing now. Just some thoughts I had this Halloween, and a sense I've had about what it feels like in America. There feels like something has seriously gone wrong on a spiritual basis. I don't know if you guys have felt it, but I have. Talk to you guys later.
I go here. Oh, this motherfucker. Ramsey Paul, da 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 da. Alright, where did he go? He went there. So I shall go right about here. I can't let him go there, so I'll go right there. I mean, I could go there, he connects, that's pointless. So I'll just go here. Where'd my video go?
Odd people. So maybe that's it. I don't know. So anyway, yeah, I didn't want to make that a thing. The only reason I covered it because he's kind of in the sector. I think a lot of you guys know him. He used to interview Richard Spencer. He's, he talked about the revolutionary phenotype. That he's a biologist. He's a real intelligent man. So this interesting story because it's just like one of the classic, and I'm not saying it's his case, but it's a classic when a husband or boyfriend murders a woman, dumps her body somewhere. They do almost the exact same pattern, right? So I'm not saying he's doing it, but it's like the same pattern. And it's just strange, put it that way. But he needs to not really worry what I think. He needs to worry what potentially the prosecutors and a jury will think. And it's probably not a good look, but that's up to him. I'm not, maybe he's the smartest guy around. Samson. Let's see here. Let me just see Samson. Samson is, thank you, $3. In Israel, the Jewish soldiers guarding the border wall shoot and kill anyone trying to illegally enter Israel. But their ethnic kin in America call us racist for wanting a wall and stopping immigration. Yeah, I mean, what Israel does is a reasonable policy. It's an invasion. And I mean, you need to give warning, but if they're going to invade, you got to shoot. That's what Israel does, and I don't blame Israel for doing that. But yeah, there is a hypocrisy when a lot of these groups, they demand that we be invaded, but their homeland needs to be protected. And I'm like, nah, we're not playing that game anymore. If you're doing that to our homeland, you lose your homeland. If you don't like it, then you need to play nice. So that's my position on that. So I'm for everyone having a homeland, including the Jewish people, to have their homeland. But if they're not going to play nice, if they're going to fund and be behind a lot of this mass immigration into our countries, then we should fund the same thing into Israel. And turnabout's fair play. So that's it. Thank you, though. And I've talked about that quite a bit, but I definitely do agree with that. Let's just see here. All right. Let's see here. Oh yeah, I was going to show you guys this. It was kind of interesting. This will get like the normie Republicans all excited. This is breaking. This Chicago youth football program is being kicked out of their neighborhood field house so it can become an illegal alien shelter on Monday. The player and over 600 residents showed up to protest. Look at that white woman, so excited. Now, see, CivNats love this shit because this gives them permission in their minds to oppose us. Because the typical CivNat Republican's like, well, I don't care if these millions of people come in and ruin my community and commit crime and turn it into a shithole, as long as it's done illegally. That's my point. It needs to be done legally. It's like, God, it drives me crazy. That's what they say. Because they're so scared about being called racist. But when, oh no, this is hurting our precious black community. Oh no. And because of that, then now they can oppose the people coming in. So just a second, I got to check here. I might have, do I have a technical issue or something like that? Okay, let's see. All right, we're having someone causing trouble on Rumble. Hang on here. And I try to keep, most people do things pretty good. So sorry about that, but thank you, Sasha. Let me see here. Let's see here. All right, that guy's gone. We had a guy that wasn't with the program. Thank you, Sasha. And on Rumble, you guys can, and I trust Sasha. You guys, I believe people should speak openly and everything. But at the same time, there's certain people that aren't going to go with the program, and they just try to cause trouble. And I'm usually smarter than most of them. I see what they're doing. So he has been removed. Thank you, Sasha. Because I don't want that. I don't know even specifically what he was doing. I'll have to ask Sasha later. But I don't want someone, for example, I don't know if this guy was doing it, but I don't want someone jumping on my page and doing a Hollywood Nazi routine or something like that. I'm not saying that guy did it, but that's just an example, or anything like that. So we want to keep everything our chat. We can discuss any topic, but we don't want, N-words or anything like that. So, all right. So we took care of that now, but yeah, so this is what they do. So, because you have the black community, it's just a way for them to be able to oppose it. Because typically what a Republican will say is, well, look at a lot of these people coming in are criminals, or they could have mental health issues, or they could have diseases. Yeah, but that's not why I don't want them here. I don't care if they're not, even if they're peaceful and not criminals, and they don't have diseases and they don't have mental health issues, they're still not my people. They have a different culture, and we have a right to our homeland. That's what it comes down to. And the cucks in the Republican Party can't say that unless it impacts someone else's community, like the black community. They're like, oh, it's ruining the black community. Then they can, because they're cucks. They have to have a proxy. It's like if it's because, oh, we're trying to protect the Jewish community or black community or our precious homosexuals or based homosexual community. But it can never be for them, the white community, because, oh, that sounds like Nazism. We got to get beyond that. We got to get beyond that, guys. And so I don't really care. Here's my position. I'm sure all these illegals coming in and are bad for this black neighborhood and their little youth football team. But I don't really give a shit, because I'm not in that community. I don't really care about the community. I don't want to be around that community. I'm not a fan of that community. So I don't really care. That's not why I don't want these illegals pouring in. I don't want them in my community. That's what I care about. And that's where we need to get our people, where we can be able to do this. And so hopefully we can get to that point. So that's where we are there. All right. So let's just take a look. I think I had a couple other things here. Let's see here. We have a lot of strange people here. This is someone that something in days past, she would have a husband and a family, and they would be taking care of her. This is an older woman, and obviously she's past the age of having children, and she's kind of lost her ways. And I bet she's not married. She doesn't really have that family there. She doesn't have the church. Years ago, women, there used to be, and not just women, men, there's a way you go through life, right? You have your families, you have your community, and you have your institutions. And the church used to be an important institution. They banned that in Hollywood now. But if you look at even in the 1970s, like Little House on the Prairie, they always went to the church. And people did back then. It was important part of the community. And that's kind of what bound people together. So when you went through your life as a kid, you go to the school and you would learn from people like you, go to the church, you knew people, you grow up, get married, someone in the community, have children, and then they would go to the school and you get older. And when they're growing up, you'd be part of the community still, but you'd have a different role. You would age gracefully. You would have a position. You would now be senior. You'd be an elder. And in this case, she would be giving her wisdom to the younger girls that are getting married, and what she learned about how to deal with a husband and a family. And she would have a husband, and she would be active in her church, maybe gardening. But you have a lot of these lost souls that they don't have anything now because of modernism. She probably doesn't have a husband. She's just not part of a church. So she's trying to get something desperately to give her life meaning. And you can tell by how she's talked. She's just straight out mentally ill. She's one of these just stop oil people that are crazy. They glue themselves to like paintings or the road.
How worse does it have to get? How many kids have to die? How many more young people have to do this stuff? I don't know what else to say, Anna. Why aren't you on the streets with us? That's all I can say. How do you explain your inaction? How How do you explain it? Everyone here, all the presenters that we talk to, how do you explain your inaction? How much longer are you going to keep this journalistic objectivity up until the water's lapping at your ankles, until your own kids haven't got food?
Well, so she's literally, and I don't think she's lying. She's just mentally off. She really buys as lies that the oceans are rising. They're not. There's, believe me, sweetheart, the people have a lot more money than you. They're buying oceanfront property like Obama and everyone else. The ocean's not rising. The polar bears aren't dying. There's more than ever. This is all bullshit. And you banning oil, ironically, if we did ban oil, that would be a mass extinction event, pretty much. Most of the world would die because without petroleum and fertilizer and insecticides to be able to grow the food, there's going to be like a mass death. That is what is going to happen. So, yeah, so that's what would happen. But she's just so out of it. This is her religion now. She's trying to give her life meaning.
How long?
And for Just Stop Oil, what's next? Will you continue to disrupt events, or what's the?
Of course, because there's no penalty. They're supported by the establishment. There's no penalty. If I ran things, she wouldn't be doing this.
What's the plan?
Because it's morally wrong to not take the action that we know from history has got some chance of having an effect. People feel powerless. We are the opposite. When we come together, we have enormous power. There are so many more of us than there are of them.
So she's bought into the whole climate change hoax, and she wants to ban oil, which would eliminate, it'd be like a mass genocide if we banned oil. Really, it really would. But she's stupid. And it's all about emotion for her. She's mentally unstable. She shouldn't be, in a different time, she would have a support structure instead of getting in these weird SJW causes that are supported by the establishment. And this is where we are right now. Let's see here. So we just here. All right. I don't want to go through that because that's sort of let's just take a look here at yeah, I like this is one of my few politicians I ever gave money to was Ron Paul. So listen to Ron Paul and I'll do my comments on him. So here we go.
It's good. It's losing its authority, the military as well as the diplomatic authority around the world, the economic power. We are bankrupt. It's just a matter of that realization set in. But because we have been very wealthy and very aggressive, and we had the reserve currency of the world and the maximum number of weapons, we've gained a lot of power, and especially since World War II. But we're seeing the end. We are bankrupt, and that's why there's a bit of a problem over the budget routinely, but worse this year than usual. So that means it's coming to an end. The dollar is not destined to be a dollar, 10 years from now. But you just can't have a currency that's undefinable and then just say, well, we can make as much as ever. But we've had so much power and so many people are sucked into the system. They may support us and they may support the dollars because they're still receiving dollars from us, and we buy their support. At the same time, it's only going to be temporary because eventually those dollars won't buy very much. But there's too many people dependent on us, and so I kept thinking, well, there's a few of them going to get together, and that's still a possibility. When the time comes, getting together and just dumping the dollars and really punishing us. But right now, there's too many people benefiting by it. But it's when the dollar continues to erode in value, and all of a sudden people, maybe when we approach that crack up boom, where people get to the point, no matter what it is, it's going to be better than just holding dollars. We're not there, but we could. But that's when it would really have to end. In the meantime, we are going to continue to punish the innocent more than the beneficiaries. The deep state the pharmaceutical industry, even the medical industry, and also the military industry. They're going to continue. I mean, they haven't let up. No matter how disastrous this whole thing has been in the Middle East and Vietnam and Korea and Libya, Syria, they never stop, But that's why we have to do our best to talk them into stopping. But at the same time, we have to realize that it's going to continue. It will end, and we better be ready to replace the mess that we have now with something that made a lot of sense. And I think we could learn a few more lessons from our founders. I think we have forgotten a lot of what they were trying to talk to us about.
Yeah, good message from Ron Paul. And even though he's old, he's still, unlike Biden, he can still talk about issues. And the dollar bit, again, because everyone has dollars, so it's not going to go down right away. Even China does. But we're already seeing potentially with Russia getting together with their alliance with China. And you could see a competitor. And with the deficit spending, we're going to see more and more inflation. That is true. Let me just see here. I had something else. It was kind of interesting. Yeah, this was interesting. I was telling you guys this was bullshit at the time. It's kind of like some other issue I can't talk about on YouTube, but I was right on. But this is a war in Ukraine, the proxy war. BBC in 2022, Russia's running out of weapons. This is October of last year, so it's been a year ago. Almost exactly. It's October 6th now, and October 14th last year. War in Ukraine. Is Russia's stock of weapons running low? And they answer, yeah, that Russia's about out of weapons. And now, this is almost exactly a year later. Ukrainian war. Western allies say they're running out of ammunition. And see, this is, someone made a comment, and this is a very interesting comment someone made, and a lot of people don't get through their heads. Is this not about spending on Ukraine? Because when we send money to Ukraine, that assumes we're getting weapons, but the money itself won't do anything. Meaning, if we give Ukraine a bunch of $100 bills, they can't shoot $100 bills at Russians. $100 bills don't do anything. They're useless. You have to convert them into missiles or ammo or artillery shells. And we don't have those anymore. We're kind of out. So it's not really a matter of money. Europe is tapped out. And Biden, remember when he decided to use cluster bombs, even though earlier they said it'd be a war crime to use cluster bombs. Biden said, well, we have to use them because we ran out of the other artillery. So we're at the bottom. We're out of artillery. And you're like, oh, artillery shells, missiles, and everything. And it's like, oh, well, we just need to gear up and make some more. Well, but you just can't do that on a dime. And over the past couple of decades, we've outsourced most of our industry, a lot of it to like China and places. So it's not even really feasible to really ramp up. I mean, we're talking a decades-long project just to catch up what Russia's doing, because Russia hasn't outsourced. They are just pumping out drones, tanks, ammunition. We don't have that because the military experts or the people that design our policy, we weren't ever supposed to be in a major war again. All wars were supposed to be very short, and maybe stuff like either something like Afghanistan, where sort of a low intensity conflict, where they're running around in sandals and an AK-47. We drop bombs on them every once in a while. Or we get pissed off at some Middle Eastern country and we shoot some Tomahawk missiles here and there. And we send a message and then, we replenish those. No big deal. And if there ever should, or we thought, God forbid, to be a war with Russia and China and be a nuclear war and be over in like 3 months, one way or the other. But no one ever thought we'd be back at World War I, wars lasting years. That wasn't in the playbook. We thought those days were gone, but we're back in those days. And we are fighting war with Russia. We're using Ukrainian blood for the most part. They're the ones dying, but it's our war. We could end it. And we're running out of ammo now. And that is just a fact. And dollar bills aren't of any use. They're not, $100 bills aren't going to hurt the Russians. You got to convert those somehow into ammunition. Otherwise, we just can't really, we can't do this. We can't fund it anymore. And just to show you that, it's just not even, let me just show you another thing. This is Britain too. They are announcing, and then again, this isn't Alex Jones. This is, was this a BBC or one of those top ones? Britain has run out of arms to send to Ukraine. So they said, we've given away all we can afford, and other countries should step in. And Britain does, they're in the same issue. They deindustrialize. They can't make a lot of ammunition, so they're tapped out. Everyone's like tapped out now, and just throwing $100 bills. I mean, that's beneficial to like Zelensky's wife, so she can go on her $1 million shopping spree in Paris or New York City. But it's not really much valuable in being able to fight in the